the gaslighting or the what we call the cognitive destabilization. That means making arguments with you or engaging in arguments, and you are intentionally escalating, especially when you know that you are wrong. The role and the goal that we do here in this distortion is to get you to buy in or to believe that you are perhaps contributing to the likelihood of violence. Today, we're not talking about hypotheticals. We're talking about real lives lost, breaking the silence of domestic violence. We just saw recently in news, Lieutenant Governor killed himself and his wife as they were going through a brutal divorce, leaving his children having to call 911. And in Shreveport, Louisiana, we saw a man in what they call familiar massacre who killed his 7 children and an 8th child that was in the home. These challenges and these issues that have impacted families will cause trauma from generations to come. So we've seen also other situations where there's been family violence, not necessarily leading in death. For example, Taylor Frankie Paul in the domestic violence incident that we saw on television. This woman here fighting and brutally engaging with her husband while their children are in the room. No charges were filed. However, this is a good indication that violence has major impacts on families and children. These are not isolated incidents. These are what we call patterns of family violence across all the cases that I've shared with you. And many of them, something that we see very clear. The patterns and the incidences are not only preventable, they tend to be repeatable. Separation with high lethal risk. We have control and loss, where the escalation, where the arguments began to go to a level where the violence is almost intimate. And then there's the public and private split of identity. Just as within a lieutenant governor's case, we see the public self where the whole family appears to be together and have it all together and happy. However, inside that home and in that community, there was trouble, there was turmoil. This identity split is what causes many people to be in shock, but it's also what contributes to allowing those family secrets to exist. So we have the emotional abuse, we have the family violence, and most importantly of all, what concerns me is that the children become the victims. So you'll notice something also within all of these cases, that they follow a script where the escalation becomes to the point where it is absolutely predictable. So we're talking about these patterns today. We're talking about how they develop, how they escalate, and how they can be interrupted. Now, before we get into this, I think it's only fair that we just kind of unpack what this family violence looks like at a national level. So y'all tune into this, right? 1 in 5 homicides. That's right, 1 in 5 homicides in the United States where there's a kill, the death is related to an intimate partner. Over 50% of female homicide victims 50% are killed by a current or, and remember this, a former partner. And 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. So we see something that continues to exist, not just in one particular community, but it has spread and it is a national health matter. 10 million people per year are affected by domestic violence. So I know some of you may want to change. I may know some of you may be a little uncomfortable about this discussion, but every once in a while we have to get into it because we've reached a point where it is a public health matter, not just a criminal issue, but strongly linked to trauma exposure, attachment issues, and dysfunctions within the family. And it becomes from generation to generation. So we have to examine this. Now, just in the Fairfax case, just as in many other cases, the question is often pondered, when is this domestic violence, especially at the point where there's a murder or murder-suicide, when does it tend to occur? I need you all to ponder that. But this is what the research shows, that the most dangerous times is during the separation or immediately after leaving. And so these are critical times that I tell everyone that we have to focus on. So yes, it is important because in this discussion, I know there may be some of you who are watching this that are in the middle of this matter right now. But the loss of control in that relationship, the escalation of the violence in that relationship, and the triggers, recognizing what sets these things in motion. Divorce filing, we see that, or the custody dispute, or perceived abandonment becomes three areas that kind of trigger or set the amount of violence into motion. Divorce is a very difficult and troubling thing, not just for the two individuals going through it, but for the family, the extended family, the community, and the friends. And typically in divorces, there are no winners, but there is a clear casualty of that war, and that's the children. We see these also, you've seen on television many times that there's a warning or an announcement that comes across everybody's phones and social media about an abduction. But what you don't often hear in that abduction, oftentimes is one parent, the non-custodial parent, that has taken matters into their own hands and to abduct the children. You don't necessarily hear that language, but custody is an emotionally driven issue that gets people to a point that we're not as being rational as we should be, but the emotional toll is very realistic. And so these domestic violence patterns and these matters that we see is what we have to tackle and have an honest and sobering discussion with. Family violence, we see, is contributing, is affected by several things. You've heard of the notion of power and control. And we'll have to examine what that really looks like in relationship. Children's exposure to violence also is a frightening impact of these of the family violence and the economic stress, right? The masculinity threat is one of the things that we see that are contributing factors that makes almost emotional or physical violence inevitable. And we pay attention to, when we look at the statistics, the number of violent incidences related to a firearm or firearm possession. So we see and we understand this, and I want to be very clear, violence is learned and then it is normalized. Right, so social learning theory kind of has that concept down packed. But think about what we're saying here is that it is learned. We see it growing up, we see it in our community, and then it becomes a tool in terms of how we handle conflicts. So that theory says then that it's normalized. That means that when it does occur, it doesn't cause any community disruption. For some people, they're saying they see it on a daily basis. We also see some other things that kind of contribute to it. And as you all are listening to this, I need you to take your own self-inventory. Think about stress, plus the inability to cope with the stress as a contributing factor for the likelihood that we're going to lose control to that level. So here are some honest discussions that we have to get into, that signs, listen to this, that you may actually be in a domestic violence relationship. So pull out your pens. I want you all to get this checklist together, because remember, violence is not just physical, it's emotional as well. So take this inventory. Number one, the gaslighting, or the what we call the cognitive destabilization. That means making arguments with you, or engaging in arguments, and you are intentionally escalating, especially when you know that you are wrong. The role and the goal that we do here in this distortion is to get you to buy in or to believe that you are perhaps contributing to the likelihood of violence. We also see that another sign that you may actually be entering or on the verge of that type of relationship, when one partner is pushing or going overboard with matters of isolation. Let me give y'all an example. Whenever there's an argument or a disagreement, that partner says, how come you always have to call your family? Why every time I talk to you, you got to have a conversation with your friends? The isolation begins to occur. And again, this is how violence is able to exist in the private setting of the home, because victims oftentimes, before they even realize it, they have isolated themselves. They've insulated the family from what the community is now not able to see. Some of us have gone to our family members so many times that they've become exhausted. So isolation occurs because when the victim begins to believe that there's nobody they can go to. And so if you're in this phase, you may be, from an emotional standpoint, even going to the point of family or physical violence. Financial control is another sign that I'm going to ask you to watch for and pay attention. There's nothing more vulnerable than being in a hostile or strained relationship and you are financially dependent upon that person. And that shows up on both sides. For the women, it's dangerous that the notion or the idea of leaving, that you believe financially you can't leave because you're financially dependent. Where am I going to go? How am I going to take care of the children? And so we see the financial dependence as real. And even men, some of you don't like the position or the condition that you're in right now. You're living with someone or you're in a relationship that you don't want to be in, but you're there because of a degree of dependence as well. And so you, even in that situation, may find yourself in an unhealthy relationship that you're not ready to leave. Another sign, too, I'm going to ask you to pay attention to is the monitoring. Now, people can go on these days and you can check like 360 or the location services. And from a safety and care and concern standpoint, that's a beautiful thing. As a matter of fact, my entire family, my children, my wife, we're all on Life 360. So we're able to track and follow each other and keep up. But that's a family piece around care, concern. From a healthy standpoint, it's unhealthy when you're monitoring and tracking your family member and your mind is already made up that you have issues of trust or mistrust in that relationship. And so I need you all to take a look at that checklist, right? Because again, that love does not have to hurt. It does not have to be in that matter. Now, there are some of you who may be engaging in these types of abuse. And yes, I'm not going to let this go by, but I'm having a conversation with you too, right? Your self-assessment, I'm going to invite you to do. Number one, do you equate control with love? Now, that's a tricky one because some of us have been socialized to believe being the man of the house that we got the final say so. And so that we now are equating love with taking care of everything and having to have the final say in every matter within the house, every financial decision, every business decision, every family decision, that your level of control, allowing that to be a shared responsibility becomes problematic for you. It's a sign. It's a sign that you may be using one of the tactics that are associated with family violence. Do you escalate when you feel rejected? Now, that's one that I need you all to pay attention to. Because again, this is self-assessment. Am I using abusive behaviors or tactics? And here, feeling rejected, what do? There are a lot of men, and brothers, I'm going to be honest with you. There are a lot of men out here, numerically, you're grown men, but emotionally, you're probably at the age of 16, 17, 18. You don't handle rejection very well. It's one of the things that becomes critical under emotional development or emotional intelligence that we have to begin to focus on. You can't handle rejection. You can't handle being told no. It gets to the point where it is problematic. And then you externalize blame. Now, this unique form of or tactic in abuse, if you're using it, brothers, this is the one you're wrong. You know that you are absolutely at fault. Even if you gotten to the point that now the emotions have gotten to the level you're calling out a name, you're engaging in some form of physical violence, and you're blaming the other person. That language sounds like this. You made me do it. I'm sorry, but if you hadn't done A, B, and C, those are the tactics. You're responsible for your own behavior. And so you all do that inventory. Am you engaging in that, right? They made me do it become such a form of a distortion that what you're saying and what you do, it does not match. So take the inventory because you may very well be one involved in such a tactic. Batterer intervention programs are programs that are all over the country for individuals who have found themselves have gotten into a domestic violence situation. So here's what I'm proposing as we engage in this. I need you all to talk to someone. Sisters, if you're in a family violence situation, I need you to talk to someone. Brothers, if you find yourself losing control in these relationships, you need to have conversations with someone. But here's what we do know, and I need you all to, I'm going to give you all this because it's important. Hey, just wanted to jump in for a moment to invite you every Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. when I go TikTok live. That's 6:30 Eastern time. We engage in great conversations. I have guests coming on in, and guess what? You get to engage me. I can't wait to bring you in live so we can take these conversations to the next level. That's at Dr. Gio White at the TikTok live. I'll see you Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. If you are arrested and charged with family violence, different states have different rules. So here's what I mean. In California, if you are arrested and charged with family violence, you may very well be court ordered to attend 52 weeks of family violence classes, 90 minutes a session. Here in Georgia, it's 24 weeks. That's right, 24 weeks that you have to go to and attend. And if you don't, your freedom or your probation can be revoked. There are a lot of things I make a big issue about that said that you may not have known before. Well, here's your opportunity to come know about it now. I need you to be mindful of the consequences of some of those behaviors. And I also need you to be mindful of what we call that power and control will. Brothers, sisters, these are the things that are predictable. I need y'all to hone in on, right? This is from something called the Duluth model, right? So this power and control will is something that you see in relationships. You may not be aware that you're doing it, and you may not be aware that you are experiencing it, but I'm going to tell you all about it today. The first one is we paying attention to, like I said, the emotional abuse. Now, again, most people will pride themselves and tell someone, I've never put my hands on a person before. And so we look at the coercion, we look at the threat, we look at the isolation, we look at the managing the finances, we look at all these things. So you haven't put your hands on a person, but that person, it walks on eggshells on a daily basis because they're afraid of an encounter with you. They can't be honest with you because they don't want the smoke. And so we see some of these things here that are real. Minimizing, denying, and blaming is another feature that we see in tactics that some people may use. Right? And so you were going to minimize, oh, I was just playing with you, or it wasn't that serious. We're going to deny, no, I didn't do that. Or we're going to blame if you hadn't done A, B, and C. So you all, this is a sobering conversation. The economic piece that you're managing, the money. I heard one gentleman say to me in a session, he said, Dr. White, I don't have no power and control. Anything she ever needs in terms of money, all she has to do is ask. I've never told my wife no. Think about that. He says, I never told my wife no. Anything she ever wants, all she has to do is come to me. And I say, why does she have to come to you? So you all are married, there's no account that she can use. She has to come to you like an allowance? Think about that. Let that sit in. So these are things that some of these ways of thinking and processing things, you all, it's just how we were raised. It's how some people were socialized to buy into and believe these things. But here's the crisis, the corner crisis that we have here. These types of these types of traumas, then they become intergenerational. What your parents did and you experienced it, then you become an adult, you do it, now your children are experiencing it. And if we don't disrupt it, then it was something that will begin to go from generation to generation. And I'm going to tell you this right now, for everybody who's watching this, stop saying there's a curse. the family curse. There's no such thing as a family curse, as if somehow the history of domestic violence in your family is some spiritual or negatively divine thing that has impacted the entire family. And stop believing that it's in your DNA, that your grandfather was abusive, your father abusive, you abusive, it's in the gene. No, these are patterns. Patterns that were created and patterns that can be disrupted. But we see that with children, when there's a great deal of exposure to violence, then it is something that they're likely into their adulthood to be victimized by it or to perpetrate it. Right? So what is normalized in childhood becomes repeated in adulthood unless it is disrupted. So this is a heavy conversation. This is a discussion that we have to engage in. Men can be victims, and I just want to throw this out before I leave you, that I do recognize that men can be victims as well. However, the majority of severe or lethal domestic violence cases are normally committed by men. Now, for women, here's how one of the common ways power and control exists when women engage in it. In places like Georgia, in other states, if a man is not married and has a child born out of wedlock, he has no rights to that child. If they're in other states and they were never married and he did not establish paternity, he has no rights to the child. So here's where the power and control kicks in. You are using that child to manage, to control, or to punish the father. And people don't want to have that conversation, but it's real. There's a lot of research that we talk about power and control. There's a lot of research out there that focuses on women as victims, but no one wants to have the conversation about the victimization of men, particularly when the children are being used. You move to another state and all of a sudden you are regulating and having control over the child's access. You started a new relationship and the new man in your life, he becomes a great father to the non-custodial parent, and now you're disrupting or regulating. You have issues because now the man is in a healthy relationship. You're insisting that you no longer have any emotions or feeling, but the moment you see him in a new relationship, you began to use the child as a control tactic. So yes, I know that part is going to upset some people. I know someone's going to want to counter and say, but Dr. White, when you look at the overwhelming amount of domestic violence, how dare you? Yes. We have to have a conversation about the whole thing. So we see the gender differences that exist in this matter, but it is a real live issue. So here's what I need everyone to do. Some steps or actions that I'm gonna ask all of you to do. If you're experiencing abuse, develop a safety plan. Identify an exit strategy. Secure documents and finances in the home. I always tell people, get an extra card. If you got a debit card, a check card, a friend that you can trust very well, they need to have access to that card. Keep stuff in your car. Leave stuff at your friend's house. Contact support systems that can help you. Do not wait until an incident is occurring and all these matters kick in place. You need to have a code when you call your friend. I don't care if the code word is, how's your dog doing? That your friend now knows that is a sign to say, pay attention, it's getting hostile in the house. Or are you coming into work tomorrow, which means come and get me, right? So work on the signs, get those pieces together. And if you know someone that is going through it, for those of you who have that care and concern, these are the things I need you to do. Listen without judgment. Yes, I know they've complained and bent your ear a million times about what that person is doing, but I'm still going to ask you to listen without judgment. Avoid just leave advice. Y'all, I'm going to tell you, leaving is harder than what you realize. Research shows that in domestic violence cases, a person may leave up to 11 times before they finally go. 11. So I'm going to challenge you all to avoid the just leave because it's far more complex than that. Also, If that family member, that friend comes to you, no matter what, always open that door. No matter how tired you become, no matter how traumatized you become, here's a reminder: you're enduring secondary trauma because you know that person and you care for someone who's going through it, but they're going through the primary trauma. So if you know someone, always open that door. And the support autonomy, recognizing that in that discussion that they have a choice. And so don't be too demanding of them, but they have to know that no matter what, they can come to you. If you fear you may be abusive, seek therapy immediately. Establish those friendships immediately. Address the control and belief and learn about the thing called emotional regulation. We see it. So in closing, I'm going to tell you the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I need you all to be aware of it. 1-800-799-7233. Or you can text START to 88788. Again, START to 88788. And of course, 911 immediately. These are some things I think are critical. I know this was a difficult discussion. I know there's a great temptation to turn, but do me a favor, you all. Just share this with a friend. You don't even have to put a context. Just say, go to check out what Dr. White has said, and they will get the context clues. So tonight, we've talked about the pain. Today, we're talking about the reality. This morning, we'll talk about the patterns. We're going to continue to do it and have this discussion because domestic violence is not random. It is predictable, and most of all, it is preventable. So the strategy is not just that people are dying. It's the warning signs that we have to step in and be involved and care. So I leave you with this. Love should never require you to shrink, suffer, or survive. And if we are serious about saving lives, if we're really serious about saving lives, we must be just as serious about confronting the truth and break the silence, break the healing, begin the healing process, and break the cycle. If we do these things, you may just very well save someone's life. You might just save someone's life by simply sharing this message with them. I'm Dr. Gary O. White. I hope that there's something that I've said that can just save one relationship, one life, one child, one community, and one family.